know, that's why Carolina's in Chapel Hill and USC's in California. And the university in this state always has been, always will be, Clemson. Print that, tweet that.
And I hope they come in here undefeated. That's what I told you before the game. Our team believes. Our team believes. They got heart. We got greatness in us. They say we can't do it. What they say now?
Down go the champs. Auburn's 17-game win streak comes to an end.
We got greatness in us. So I told them, you got greatness in you, but you got to make a decision to be great. They made a decision to be great today. And I couldn't think of a better place to end this streak. It's Death Valley, South Carolina, baby.
And now it's time for TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty.
They got the coaches back, and they have each other's back.
Welcome in, everybody, to another edition of TigerNet Talk. I'm your host, Lawton Swann. Glad to be here with you once again. Wednesday night, 9 o'clock, we kick off the show, front page of TigerNet.com. And also, if you go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com, click the live button. We keep the archive stuff on the front page. The live one you got to come into. Check out all our advertisers and sponsors there. This show, of course, presented to you by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. You can check them out at CrossCreekTimber.com and CrossCreekRealtyLLC.com. Thank you all for being here. We've got a bunch of folks with us in the chat room live. You can come on in and join us. If you have a Facebook account, it's simple. You can get in to the game, get off the bench, join the ball game, come on in, have some fun. We've got Craig in the chat room, RC Sports Card, grilled donuts. Interesting. I like the handle. I'm not sure that I've ever had a grilled donut. I am in a bit of a situation with the fact that I'm in love with Dunkin' Donuts coffee and Krispy Kreme donuts. If I could find one of those that were side by side, if I could find the combination of those two side by side, it would be pretty bad for me, I think, in the weight department. I may have to expand the chair a little bit. I may go all Clemson Tom on this chair. If you were watching the show last week, Clemson Tom on the old host chair. And I sat in that thing a few days ago just to see exactly what happened. I'm not sure. That chair was on its last leg. I got it back when I was in college, so I can't blame Clemson Tom completely for breaking it. As I did say on the show, I put it over there because I knew that it was in dire straits. Clemson81@gmail.com, that's the email address, and the phone lines are open. Recruiting has got to be on the minds of everyone out there. We were supposed to have Tom Luganbill of ESPN on the show with us. He's not going to be able to make it. Last-minute calls to Bristol. He texted me this morning. Oh, man. And these guys get up early. They get up earlier than even I do. He sent me a message, said, hey, I can't be on tonight. Can we do it some other time? So we're going to look to record his audio on Sunday. Of course, it's the Super Bowl. What are you going to do with Clemson Hotline, Swanee? We're going to move the recording of that to Monday, about 4 o'clock. We may not have a single person here with us at Monday. We will have Luganbill's interview. I'm going to ask him about recruiting, get his take on these players who, and this is something I know I'm going to try and talk to David Hood about when we get him on momentarily. David was, of course, on WCCP this evening with Sturgis there, if you had an opportunity to listen to that from 7 to 9. Pretty good show that they had going tonight, talking recruiting. Really enjoyed that. And then we sat down here and get an opportunity to have him on with us, of course, here on TigerNet, and just kind of feel him out for what he's thinking about some of these guys. But I'm looking forward to asking Luganbill, is it really that big of a selling point for these recruits to go to the SEC over the Atlantic Coast Conference? And it's not to say that it's not a pull for an Alabama or an LSU or a Florida. Some of those programs who have traditionally done it, maybe even a Georgia, who have been right there in the mix. And I know Georgia hadn't won a national championship since before Clemson has, but they have been in the mix. Going back to 1980 for Georgia. But they've been in the mix a lot more frequently than Clemson at the end of the season. Mark Richt's been on the hot seat, though, in and out of the hot seat. That guy, he must wear thermal underwear because he has been on the hot seat, off the hot seat. You never know what's going to happen with him. Right now, I think he's off. But can you imagine if they have a disappointing season this coming year, kicking it off against your Clemson Tigers? That's all I'm saying. You never know what Mark Richt's going to give you. But is it a pull for Ole Miss? I mean, you see all these recruits going to Ole Miss. is it really that much of a pull for somebody to sell Mississippi State, Vanderbilt, Kentucky? And it's not to say that Clemson has lost players to those schools per se, but you've got to think when you're a young man, and I've said this before on the program, it's not like playing in the Canadian Football League. You are playing still in the NCAA with a shot at the BCS. And if you think about the road that you have to hoe to get through to the national championship game, while the SEC can pat themselves on the back with their national championship run, which has been as impressive as anything, you also have to start to think, to be honest with you, as a player, do I want to get in a league where I might be on an elite team and can't climb through it? Or can I go to another conference and build a new elite team? Because for me, it makes sense that if you felt like you could go to a school and be with the right players, if you could go to a Clemson in the Atlantic Coast Conference and become the dominant team in that league, it's easier to get to the national championship. It's just easier. Now, granted, this system may provide us with the SEC champion consistently, and we might not like the system that we've been provided, and we may all hope for a change in the system. And I'm glad we're going to see some of that. But when you talk about strictly as a player, as a 17, 18-year-old high school kid, thinking about the decision to be made, when I look at the rankings and I see all the SEC schools up near the top, and I realize that parity, while a good thing, can also be a negative. And it would be nice to be in a league like the Atlantic Coast Conference, playing for a team like Clemson, who really has handled business against teams they should beat the past 2 seasons. There's been the occasional letdown along the way. This past season, though, specifically, no. I know you're upset that you didn't get the job done at Florida State. When you're up 28 points, you really believe, when you're up 14 points, you really believe that you're going to hold on to win, that you're not going to see such a swing in momentum when you're up 28 to 14. I mean, I think that's a natural feeling that you have. You expect, no matter what the circumstances are, that a team, even as good as Florida State may have been last year, playing at home, is not going to overcome that when you have the offense that Clemson has. I think you feel that way, and I think it's a fair way to feel. I don't think anybody would begrudge you for thinking still we let them off the hook. To go all Dennis Green on this situation. To let them off the hook. But at the end of the day, if I'm 18 and I'm looking at it, I'm thinking, man, you know what, at Clemson, if we get a couple of pieces in there on the defensive line, if we get a couple of pieces in the secondary, if somehow Adams, Lawson, Alexander, Kim Dichie, you look at Kendall Fuller, guys who have been right there, and Clemson's come down to the final 2 with a ton of great players. How important is that? I think that's a key question. Sure, you don't land the guy, but how important is it to be the team that's second? You know, as we had Allie Rogers, she was first runner-up for Miss America. Is it important to be the first runner-up in some cases for the future of your recruiting? And for Clemson to be in the mix with all these guys, I think it really says something about the team, about what people feel nationally when they see this program, much like what people feel when they see Oregon. I think it says something about the coaching staff and the job that Dabo Swinney, Jeff Scott, Brent Venables now, Chad Morris, everybody, when they're out on the road, when they're getting into these homes of these young players, when they're having them on campus, the camaraderie that they feel, the belief that Clemson is different. You know, we always say it. We talk about how these hills, there's something about these hills. And you hear people coming to the campus and saying that it's just an unbelievable environment. It always amazes me how much these players, I guess it's the bond that they feel instantly with Clemson compared to some of these concrete campuses that they may go to, where you've got 10, maybe not 10 times, but 3, 4 times the student population. It's just a huge, huge campus. And then finally, I think maybe The fact that over the past few seasons you've had some guys like Sammy Watkins who have really shown out on the national scene. You're getting a lot of publicity, much more than many schools. Maybe not as much as the SEC schools on ESPN, but you're getting a lot, especially when you're playing well. All of that for me as a player, I'm thinking, hey, that might be the school I want to go to. And it wouldn't take too many of those pieces falling into place next Wednesday, a week from the day when we're breaking that down. If we're fortunate, if Dabo has something up his sleeve, he's somewhat like a ninja. He surprises you at times with what he pulls off. And I don't know if there's any secret, like in the old wrestling days, they pull the brass knuckles out of the trunks or maybe load the boot. I don't know if Dabo's got anything of that prepared for this Wednesday. But if there is, and if these players have come to the realization that I think you have, and that many others have, not just in the Atlantic Coast Conference, but in other leagues, I think it's a great selling point for the Southern Cows of the world. Now, they get a great pull out of California, but they have a similar sell. Hey, come here. There's just a couple of teams we're really competing with, Oregon and Stanford, and everybody else we're not too concerned about. Now, they had a bad season. I understand. I heard David Hood say tonight, as a matter of fact, Southern Cal can get the five-star players, they just can't coach them. Lane Kiffin just can't coach them. Oregon's got a similar sell. High-profile offense. You have a chance to win a lot of ball games. Texas and Oklahoma now with the Big 12 breaking down just a little bit. I think they are two teams that have an argument. They can say, Texas A&M is gone. This league can be won. You don't have a conference championship game to go through. The process of elimination for me, if I'm looking at the SEC, I'm not going to Ole Miss. I'm not going to Mississippi State. I don't want to touch, really, Auburn, to be honest with you. I don't want to be anywhere near Alabama and LSU on a consistent basis. And the SEC West teams continue to pull people in. It's a bit of a surprise for me. It really is. And I know you want to play against the best. Iron sharpens iron. But I want to be in the national championship game if I'm a player. And if you think you're going to Ole Miss or Mississippi State and you're just going to strap on that chin strap every night for 4 years and hope that you're getting to the national championship, you can just keep on hoping. You can just keep on hoping, because I can tell you it's not going to happen. But if they come here, maybe we become, as they say, too deep. We'll be back. We're going to get David Hood on the line with us, senior writer for TigerNet. You're going to love it. Stay with us.
Yeah, boy, we so tough. Can't you tell that we ballin'? And these boys can't hold us back. 81 championship, and best believe we going back. Clemson, we all in. One team with one dream.
We're on the quest for the best, and we can't let anything hold us back.
These boys can't hold us back. These boys can't hold us back.
We scoop the boot, dutycalls.com. When nobody else will do it, dutycalls.com. To make that dog poop go away, call or click for a free quote today.
When nature calls, we answer. To get a free quote for dog poop removal, go to dutycalls.com now.
DOODYCALLS. Dutycalls.com.
In the Midlands area, dial 1-800-DUTY-CALLS. They're number 1 and number 2. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove. Are you a landowner who owns more than 10 acres that's interested in selling timber or pulpwood off your property? Cross Creek Timber is a full-service timber procurement company that buys standing saw timber and pulpwood. They're staffed with professional licensed foresters and fully insured with both workers' comp and general liability insurance. Let Cross Creek Timber develop the appropriate harvesting plan for your property and answer any questions regarding forest management. Call today, 864-517-3620. That's 864-517-3620 for your free woodland evaluation, or visit www.crosscreektimber.com. All you Clemson area and Clemson-owned businesses, listen up. We've got a package for you. Rates starting at just $100 a month to advertise with us here on Clemson Sports Talk. You won't believe what you'll get. Go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com. Click on the advertising information. If you're interested, email us, Clemson81@gmail.com. We can tailor a package to fit your needs, but starting rates at $100 a month, you can't beat it. Why don't you join us? Go Tigers.
I thought I'd grow up and I'd settle down. There was 10,000 girls up in Tiger Town, and it was heaven to me.
Welcome back in to TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty, LLC. And we're joined now by David Hood, senior writer for TigerNet. David, I know you've been on the radio this evening, but you found a little time to make it in here on TigerNet Talk. Thanks for coming in. And I got a chance to listen to the show earlier. There was Sturgis on WCCP. Great job, by the way, and I really enjoyed those 2 hours of Tiger Sports Talk.
Hey, I appreciate it. I'm always happy to come on with you, Lawton. It's always a great show you do.
I appreciate it. Hey, now, let me tell you, this time of the year gets a little bit exciting for everybody, and I don't know what it is that's really changed, but I feel like the past 10 years, something has really changed in recruiting. I can't quite put my finger on it. I don't know if it's social media, the coverage of so many sites of these players throughout the year, or what it is, but it's almost like we get a little Christmas here at the beginning of February.
It is. It's like Christmas in February, and it's, the football season, or at least the college football season, is over. It's been over for a month, and it kind of allows you to get that competitive fix before you know, and then once it's over, you're about a month from spring practice. So it kind of helps bridge that gap when really not a lot's going on.
Now, we were talking right before you came on about the fact that there are so many players who Clemson's been entrenched with to some degree to try to bring them into Clemson University. But the biggest argument that you hear a lot of times is these schools from the SEC simply posing the fact to these players that you want to play in the SEC. Do you buy into that mentality as a player? Because I really don't. And I was telling the folks before you came on, I really think that if I'm a player and I'm evaluating teams, I'm thinking to myself, where can I go that I can position myself to get to the national championship the easiest? And I don't believe that's ending up at an Ole Miss or a Mississippi State.
Well, it's really funny. I think that just depends on the kid. I think that there are those out there like Montravius Adams. And Montravius thinks about things. I've called him stoic before. He's a quiet kid. You're not going to go in there and turn his head with the SEC versus ACC talk. He wants to know, what's your scheme? What's my relationship with the coaches? What's my education going to be? That's a big thing with James Clark, wide receiver out of New Smyrna, East Florida. He's thinking about Ohio State because they've got a really good business school. That's not going to affect him. But then you've got kids like Marcus Robinson, and I talked to his coach a lot when his drama was going on. And he said that Florida's coaches were just coming in and preaching SEC, be on TV every week, and that's really what sold him on Florida.
Who's not on TV every week this day and age?
That's exactly right. Well, Furman probably.
Yeah. Well, and we were talking social media a few minutes ago. I'm just thinking, too, has it gone a little bit too far with these players, the ability for them? Look, I know you and everybody else who really talks to these guys through text messages or maybe even Twitter or however you want to communicate with them. Do you think, though, it's gone too far in the fact that because kids can't settle down, they feel they have this open filter to the world? People are constantly saying, hey, you don't want to go to that school. You want to come to our school. There's so much outside influence, whereas 20 years ago, really the only influence these players had was when the coach walked through the door.
I think it has gone way too far, and I've said that quite a bit. These young men aren't really allowed to sit down and kind of make their own decision a lot of times, and that's why, you like the fact that Montravius Adams doesn't have a Twitter and he doesn't check Facebook. but there are fans who, in my opinion, I know a lot of them, they're misguided. They want to get out on Facebook and they want to stalk these kids and, they want to go, you want to go to Florida, you want to come to Clemson. Clemson is the one that wants you, where they get out there on Twitter and, it almost cost Clemson last, month with Dylan Sumner-Gardner, who's a 2014 defensive back prospect out of Texas, who, his coach that was recruiting him goes to Auburn and Charlie Harbison, and he starts tweeting some stuff about Auburn and War Eagle, and, he was, just literally blasted by a lot of, Clemson fans who, hey, we're going to take to Twitter and we're going to let you know how I feel. And, they almost feel like they have to be an extension of the coaching staff or extra recruiting. It's too far.
The same people who champion Mike Reed bringing in a couple of NC State guys were those same ones knocking Charlie Harbison.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I mean,
when you all of a sudden you're a fan and you have access to these guys and they're listening to what you have to say, they're going to take advantage of it.
Now, is there a benefit for the exposure, you think, for Clemson? Maybe not this year. Let's say that things don't come Clemson's way in just a week from tonight. Let's say things don't fall Clemson's way. Somehow Lawson, Adams, guys people have been dancing with sugar plums in their head, perhaps maybe a Mackenzie Alexander, the big fish that doesn't appear to be landing at Clemson anytime soon, Robert Kimdichie. Let's just say those names don't land. Clemson's got a very solid class, but because that class may not come to the fruition that people had hoped, there may be some people that feel a little bit down about their Christmas, if you will. They didn't get everything they wanted. But is it still good for Clemson that you had that exposure this year with these top guys, and can that be a boost next year in the eyes of some of these young players, or do you think that doesn't really factor in at all?
No, I think it is a good boost. Clemson has certainly been at the forefront of recruiting with, Kimdichie and then everything that's going on. And, you hear Adams and you hear Lawson and you hear Mackenzie Alexander and, Deshaun Watson, one of the top prospects for 2014. He's a Clemson guy. Clemson's always out there. And then you have the story that featured Jeff Scott, that ran yesterday or day before yesterday. And, he's one of the top recruiters in the country. There's no doubt about that. Clemson's always at the forefront. And, I'm really not sure what is going to happen this recruiting cycle. I think that, some of the players Clemson has gotten are under the radar guys. I think they're better than people give them credit for. And if it is considered, by a lot of people to be a down year, it'll be an aberration. Clemson's already got some really strong prospects for next year, and all of this, exposure that they've gotten in the Chick-fil-A Bowl. And, when I talk to a lot of recruits, that's the first thing they mention is, boy, Clemson knocked off LSU, and
right.
It was a great game. It's, the Chick-fil-A Bowl was almost like a 3.5-hour commercial for Clemson.
You're listening to TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. That's the voice of senior writer for TigerNet, David Hood. And David, in the chat room here tonight, Bernard wants to know, outside of Lawson and Adams, who might be a wild card player that comes in February 6th that might end up signing with Clemson?
Well, if you're going to say wild card, it's got to be Mackenzie Alexander. And, I've texted him, and I think he still has Clemson right there at the top. And, you just don't know what's going on with this kid because, it depends really on who he's talking to as to who his leader is. And, he's really the one that I can't wait to see where he winds up on signing day. To me, he's a lot like Ronald Darby was last year that wound up at Florida State.
Right.
A kid that you said, he's going to go in Florida State. They've got a lot of experience ahead of him. But because of injuries, he wound up playing a bigger role than a lot of people thought. He actually did a great job and, won some postseason awards. Mackenzie Alexander's that kind of a guy. He can go in and, I think he can contribute and be a player and, maybe not start right away, but actually be one of those guys that can get on the field and you're going to see him out there some, especially as thin as Clemson may be at corner.
Well, the thing that's impressed me about him is just a week ago when I was talking about him, I said I didn't know if he had it in him to separate from his brother, but it now appears that that might be the case. I really thought for a minute maybe McEnroe, I hate to say wore the pants in the family, but it felt like McEnroe, didn't really want to be his own guy at that point. But now maybe it looks like they've gotten that together. Cheryl wants to know, Do you think Clemson's at a whole new level with recruiting, regardless of the outcome this year?
They have, and they're in, and of course it helps to be in a region that is thick with prospects, and South Carolina, North Carolina, Georgia, Florida, this area, a lot of great players. There's a lot of schools here, but there's plenty of good prospects to go around. You got great recruiters. Clemson's facilities continue to just get better. That indoor practice facility, we were in there last week. That place is amazing. And that's another thing kids mention after they go on a visit to Clemson is, talking about that place with the big video board inside of it. That's quite a recruiting tool on its own.
It's hard to believe for me when I look back at Clemson University, the year I walked on campus as a freshman, 1995, what the stadium looked like then and now, and including everything that's been done, like you said, the new practice facility, unbelievable. It's hard for me to fathom. And you look at Tennessee and the problems that they have right now financially. It's amazing that Clemson's being able to get this done so well and in such a good financial state.
Oh, yeah, and I was talking to the head of it, I'm guessing Sunday's basketball game, and, Clemson did it in the space of, 18 months, and that was pretty quick to get that done, and, there's not really any debt with it, and I keep, upgrading all of the facilities around the campus. But, man, when you walk into the West Zone and you go upstairs into the recruit area or you go into the dining hall, that's just a first-class place. The locker rooms are great, and the way it, attaches onto the stadium. And, for anybody, I don't know if you ever saw them, but, they used to have the old locker rooms at Jersey.
Right.
And, that's where they would change before and after practice. Those were not very good lockers. Just kind of put a combination lock on a little wire basket. Well, now these guys have NFL-type lockers. It's just amazing the difference that it's undergoing.
Well, and that certainly will continue to affect recruiting. Now, David, if you can stay on with us, we got to go to a short break. Can you stick around?
Yeah, I just actually pulled up into my yard, so I'll go in and get my recliner.
All right, awesome. Doing the show from the recliner. I love it. David Hood will stay on with us, folks. We're going to send you out the break. Stay with us here on TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Check them out online at crosscreektimber.com and crosscreekrealtyllc.com. Lots of people in the chat room. If you have another question about recruiting, put it in. But I'm going to take David on a turn a little bit. We're going to head towards Clemson basketball and Coach Brad Brownell and the job that he's done as of late with a very young Clemson basketball team. Stay with us, Tiger fans. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
Everybody sing Tiger Rag at the top of your lungs, and we'll party like it's 1981.
Do you suffer from a chronic case of the woohoo during football games? Do your Saturdays sound something a bit like this? Well, TigerNet Talk is out to fix that. If we can band together, we can change this reoccurring issue with a simple Go Tigers, Go Tigers Go. You can make a difference. Ban the woohoo. Do yourself a favor. And as always, Go Tigers. Take your business to the next level with innovative website design from Foodog Media. Foodog can handle all your web, graphic, and social media needs. Call them today, 843-864-9268. That's 843-864-9268. Mention this ad and receive 10% off of your website. Foodog is a Clemson-owned business. See their portfolio at www.foodogmedia.net. May the food be with you. G-Dog General Dentistry at Oak Grove is located on Highway 1 near the Barnyard Flea Market. Modern, relaxing dentistry with TVs and headphones in every room, nitrous and even oral sedation. Digital diagnostic x-rays for better quality and 85% less radiation exposure. And check out their new Clemson Patient Special. Mention that you heard about G-Dog here on the Clemson Sports Talk programs and receive an extra 5% off all services through football season. If you don't have a regular dentist, go see my dentist, Dr. Rick Jackson at G-Dog. That's General Dentistry at Oak Grove.
Hate the thought of shopping? All that hassle and can't find what you're looking for anyway? We understand. Retail stores make it difficult. Instead, try www.edistooutdoors.com. Edisto Outdoors features performance apparel and gear engineered for performance, comfort, and style. EdistoOutdoors.com. You'll enjoy the shopping and you'll enjoy the products. Great products from people who care.
Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that.
We turned up, we run down the hill, we so turned up. Rock the rock, hit the field, no competition, we first up. Offense is too fast, defense ain't scared, boy. Line up against me, we drop you on your head, boy. Death Valley be jumping, whole stadium pumping. Best fans in the whole nation, and damn right we love them. C-L-E-M-S-O-N, we Clemson, we ballin', we all
Welcome back in to TigerNet Talk presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. David Hood joins us still. He's now in the recliner relaxing. That's how you do an interview, David.
Yeah, I've already got my feet up. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this.
You can't beat it. Well, as we were kind of talking through the break, I was mentioning to you a tweet that came out from Michael Carville of the Atlanta Journal-Constitution laying out the 2013 NCAA signing day agenda for Grayson High School. Starting at 7:30, it says that Robert's parents, Coach Kahn and Coach Gregory, will be with Robert on the stage. And then they're going to introduce Robert, and Mickey Kahn's going to come in. Then Robert's going to make his announcement. Then he's requested a few minutes to mingle with his teammates. The team will return to class, and Robert will be available for interviews. And then apparently at 2:30, they're going to have their traditional signing day celebration with all the football players. So number one is going to do it by himself, it appears.
Yeah, they're just not going to include Kamara or Gallman, and maybe even Carter in on that thing. He's going to do his own thing, I guess, because of all the media crash.
Anybody who, I guess, that he was I'd like to call him maybe a tag team with him, maybe a package deal, appears they're going to have to do it on their own time because Robert's got his agenda to take care of. I hope that's wrong. I hope it's mistaken the way it's put out.
You know, it probably isn't. It's probably, one of those things where they'll do Gallman and Kamara and Carter at a later time, and Kandishi just gets his own ceremony. That's kind of the way it goes these days.
Unbelievable. One of the final questions I saw in the chat room, I wanted to ask you about this. I saw a couple of people talking about it. Just that Urban Meyer continues to be a guy who crops up. The minute Chad Morris gets a little bit interested in a player, you find out, they have a visit now to Ohio State.
And I wonder how much of that has to do with, Urban coming down and doing some television and doing some games, for Clemson the past year. I talked to Urban last year, I don't know, probably midway through the season, and he was talking about Clemson and what a great place it is. But one thing he kept telling me, I actually did an interview with him, was the talent that Clemson gets. And he was just raving about, DeAndre Hopkins, Sammy Watkins, and Andre Ellington, and Tosh Boyd. And, I guess if you're the coach and you just, get back into it, and, I think if you're at Ohio State, you can't just recruit Ohio, Pennsylvania up there. You've got to come down to Florida. You've got to come down to Alabama, to North Carolina, Tennessee, Georgia, and get these kids, because this is where the talent is. I don't think he's really going to be able to go out too much to California. So, he's taking a look at, who are some of these schools with some prime players who are they going after, and they're jumping right on top of it.
Well, obviously at Florida, he figured out the way to get it done and get those guys in there to the SEC, and he knows that from what the SEC has done over the years to the Big Ten and bowl games that he's got to get the right pieces in there if he wants to compete for a national championship. But we'll move forward a little bit. We'll get to where on Clemson's campus they play a whole lot of defense. Maybe the offense doesn't look so good. It's kind of the opposite of the college football season. But Brad Brownell and this basketball team, look, they continue. They have almost patented, they've almost made it their signature, the slow start to games. But because they play such good defense, they always find a way to get back in it. And the thing that's really impressed me the most is that even though this year there have been times where, of course, Milton Jennings has had his issues off and on the court, and now you see the other senior in Booker suffering from flu-like symptoms and stomach bugs, all of a sudden these young guys have really started to mature before my eyes, and I've really been impressed with their play as of late.
I really love what we're seeing out of Rod Hall, the point guard. He's the guy that coming into this year you were thinking really limited in what he could do. I thought he was just the guy that's going to dribble and, try and find an open man. He's learning that he can shoot the ball. He's not a lights out shooter, but he's got a decent shot. It's a little flat at times, so and he's learning that he can penetrate. And anybody that was in Littlejohn last night, and these days are running together. That dunk that he had last night was just unreal. I didn't know Rob Hall had those kind of hops.
No.
But he's starting to find his game a little bit, and Clemson needs that. And KJ McDaniels, he's going to give you that wow moment. I love him. He's another one. He's still kind of refining his game. He's not anywhere as good as he's going to be. And Jordan Roper, Adonis Fowler, these guys come off the bench, and maybe the biggest difference for me over the past 10 days or so has been DeMarcus Harrison, the transfer from BYU. I think Brad expected this kind of play out of DeMarcus all year long, but now he's ball handling out on the perimeter. He's playing good defense. He's hitting open shots. He's proven he can drive, and he's really a big difference for them. And on the night like last night, while Booker's still struggling, and you can tell the effects of the flu are still on him, and Milk didn't have a good night. He couldn't hold on to the basketball. DeMarcus Harrison stepped in. Bernard Sullivan came off the bench and had a big night.
It's amazing what a couple of makes will do for you. Harrison has gotten better. He had a nice runner in the lane, but on top of that, what's happened too, I think, is you see KJ McDaniel, who I've dubbed KJ McConfident, the way he's been able to stretch the court with his three-point shooting. It's really opened things up inside, and that's created a bunch of lanes for guys to cut through. You can't just back it down in the paint and force Clemson to do something else with the ball other than give it to Booker. It's really opened things up. And for me, when you're playing a solid defense as they're doing, and you're getting your offense going just a little bit, it makes you pretty threatening, even on the road, because as we all know, even if you're not good offensively, if you can play great defense on the road in tough environments, you give yourself a chance. Look, Clemson got the doors beat off of them late against Duke. But had Clemson been able to shoot just a little bit at Cameron Indoor Stadium, their defense may have allowed them to get out to maybe an 8 or 10-point lead. Unfortunately, neither team could put the ball in the hole, and what happened, I guess as they say, happened.
Yeah, and Duke is one of those places, if you've never been there, you just, watching it on TV, you just don't understand what it's like. Place to play with all those fans just right on top of you, and Clemson could have shot a little bit better, but I was impressed with Clemson Sunday against Virginia Tech. I saw Virginia Tech come out in that zone, and it's kind of like, here we go. But Clemson actually shot well against the zone and, proved that they could actually win a game against that type of defense. Saturday, they're going to go up, and I think they're going to see more zone against Boston College and the Conti Forum. That's a place Clemson really not a lot of success. It's one of those arenas that just seems like, something always happens. Somebody gets hot in Boston College. But if Clemson wins that game, all of a sudden you got a team that's over 500 in the ACC.
Brownell 17-4 at home against the Atlantic Coast Conference in his career. Fantastic ball at home. The fan support still disappointing. I know you guys already talked about that on Mark Sturgis' show on WCCP, so we won't really get into that. I think everybody saw it. Everybody knows what it looks like. The sad thing for me, I think, is that I really have to put it on the students. I know they don't want to hear it. They're going to say they have their labs on Tuesday night. They have things they need to get to. But look, when I was a student, I knew what came first. And if that meant I had to go to school for 14 semesters, that's what it meant, David. That's just what it meant.
Oh, yeah, and I was the same way when I was in college. It's like, hey, there's a game tonight. Well, Yeah, it's 2 hours. I mean, via flights. It's not like a, a football game where it's tailgating all day and then a 3.5-hour game and then trying to get out. Basketball's 2 hours. I mean, you go in and you get a seat and you're entertained and then you go home. And I just don't understand the apathy. This team, it's so funny. I think people look at Oliver Purnell's style of, running gun up and down,
right,
full court defense, frantic, and they just think, that was more fun to watch. This team for Purnell, they play hard. They never give up. They're always fighting. They're gritty. They're battlers, and I love watching them. I think they're a lot of fun to watch. And as I said earlier tonight, man, I'd pay money just to get in there and watch KJ McDaniels because you're going to get 2 or 3 wow.
Well, and I think if these college kids are honest with themselves, nobody starts studying until 11 o'clock. You're going to straighten the dorm. You're going to straighten your dorm room up. You're going to make your bed. You're going to do the things that you don't do on a typical day, clean the sink, everything to avoid work. Let's be honest, Clemson Tiger students who are listening to the show. If you're not going to the games, it's because you chose not to, because you didn't start studying till later. And one final question I'm going to ask you about, and a kid on this team who I've seen some real potential out of, and it may shock you, Landry Noko. Here's what I like about this kid. He's not gifted offensively. He's got a great body. He moves his feet so well, and he plays with the discipline that I want a big man to play with. And I really think that you're not going to see it this year, but I'm going to say by his junior year, he's an impactful big man in the Atlantic Coast Conference on the defensive end of the floor. If he can get just a slight offensive touch around the basket, he could be a real force for Brad Brownell down the road.
Well, and the thing is for him, he's actually going to have to be some kind of a force next season because he is the only returning post player.
Well, that's true.
That will be back next year. He's the only post player they've got coming back that's a true post guy. KJ's more of a wing player. Yeah. And I think Brownell, you're going to see him even out there and kind of getting him. You can tell sometimes he gets a little bit lost on the offensive end. You have to understand, he's a soccer player. He really didn't pick up a basketball until 4 or 5 years ago. He's still learning the game, but you can, you watch him out there, and there's nothing really off too much about him. He's really fluid, moves his feet really well, gets out of position sometimes, but you can tell he's learning. Yeah, I agree with you. By his junior year, yeah, he could be one of those. You're going to get 10, 11, 12 points out of him and hopefully double digit rebounds.
David Hood, everybody, senior writer for TigerNet, joining us here on TigerNet Talk. David, glad to have you again, my man.
As always, man, I appreciate it.
All right, Tiger fans, stick around. Final segment of the program. We're going to hear from Coach Brad Brownell some of his thoughts on some of the same things that David and I just spoke about. Find out what the coach has to say about some of the players on the team. We'll be back. Stay with us here on TigerNet Talk.
In my head, if I pointed it just we scoop the boot, dutycalls.com. When nobody else will do it, dutycalls.com. To make that dog poop go away, call or click for a free quote today.
When nature calls, we answer. To get a free quote for dog poop removal, go to dutycalls.com now.
DOODYCALLS. Dutycalls.com.
In the Midlands area, dial 1-800-DUTY-CALLS. They're number 1 and number 2. Take your business to the next level with innovative website design from Foodog Media. Foodog can handle all your web, graphic, and social media needs. Call them today, 843-864-9268. That's 843-864-9268. Mention this ad and receive 10% off of your website. Foodog is a Clemson-owned business. See their portfolio at www.foodogmedia.net. May the food be with you. Blake Austin of South Carolina Farm Bureau is an insurance agent you can count on to meet all your needs. Home, auto, health, life, you name it, Blake's got you covered, and he can save you on your yearly rates. Call him now for a free quote, 803-259-5008. That's 803-259-5008. Or Just go to ClemsonSportsTalk.com and click on the Farm Bureau logo to be connected to Blake. Do like I do and work with the best agent around, and you can tweet that. Hey there, Clemson Tiger fans. If you're interested in advertising with Clemson Podcasts, go to ClemsonPodcasts.com and click on the advertising link. And as always, go Tigers!
In 81, the Tiger goal is to win the championship. Climb to the top of the football poles, win us a bowl game trip. Like Jack and the Beanstalk, the ladder's hard to climb. But we've been up on top before, and we'll be there one more
The amazing thing about that song, climbing the ladder to the top of the ACC, that song actually came out, and I've told you this before, for those of you that tune into the show each and every week, off an album called Tiger Fever, Ode to the Paws and Claws, that came out before the national championship season. It came out that year. That's pretty impressive. Get those guys. I don't remember who wrote it. It's a Nashville Musical Review or something. Get those guys to put together a new album. I know in the chat room we got some questions. Lucas wants to know, how deep is too deep? Well, with college football, Lucas, it's never too deep. You can't go deep enough with college football. And that song didn't quite get us to the national championship, but we're climbing the ladder to the top of the ACC. That did. Matthew wants to know where his boys Chris, CT, and Tommy are. I don't know. Maybe they heard Luganville wasn't going to be here, and they chose to back out. They chose not to be here. Or maybe it was a letdown from the fact that Miss South Carolina and the first runner-up for Miss America, Allie Rogers, was on the other night, and the realization that she wasn't going to grace us with her presence again probably disappointed them a little bit. And Lee wants to know, what's my take on deer antler spray? Actually, Lee, that's what I've been drinking this evening, and that's why I've had such a great performance. That stuff is fantastic. When I was a kid growing up, we would just gnaw right on the antler of a live deer out in the woods. You ask a serious question, though. Now that it's coming out, Alabama's used it. I wonder if it's going to be spiral out of control. What a weird month in sports. And not only that, how about spraying it in your mouth? How weird is that? That stuff can't taste good. There's no way. I mean, I can't imagine. It's like, you remember the stuff, some of you probably still have some in your pocket right now that you spray under your tongue that makes your tongue burn. When you were in high school, you'd be like, I could do 17 sprays. I mean, is that the way this deer antler juice stuff works? It's pretty, I don't know. It's pretty strange for me, anything like that. I'm pretty much just the health conscious kind of guy. Try not to do anything that would be too damaging to my health, and anything like that I would be a little bit concerned about. But hey, you know what? You got to live and do what you want to do. So we'll find out as it develops, but it does certainly sound strange. Anyway, let's get out to some of the questions for Coach Brad Brownell, his post-game thoughts. I want to hear what he had to say about playing against Georgia Tech after just a couple of days rest. Here's Coach Brad Brownell.
Performance, I thought, by my guys. Knew Georgia Tech was going to come in here really ready to play with a lot of confidence after the way they played against Wake, and they came out firing, and I thought we were maybe a half step slow, the first few minutes, but thought our defense the last 30, 32 minutes was really good. Offensively, it was just good to get some production from a bunch of different guys. I told our guys yesterday that I was going to play everybody in the first half, that we would need our bench, our post players who sometimes don't play as much, to give us some minutes, especially defensively. I thought the way they play inside out, that foul trouble would certainly be an issue and could be with Milton Book, and really fatigue, to be honest with you. This was Georgia Tech does a good job of pushing it right off a make or miss, and they play very hard defensively too. So some games are physical. This is a pretty physical team to play against, especially third game in six nights. Our guys were tired. Rod was cramping, and so just to find a way to win was really good.
And that's what really was so impressive for me about this team, is that they were able to get through what they did and bounce back the way they did so quickly. Georgia Tech had that extra day's rest, and Coach Brownell gets a little bit more into that right here.
Well, just we needed to win a game like this. Obviously when you lose the one at Florida State, that really hurts. And NC State, kind of for that matter, to be honest, we were right there and had a chance to steal one in an unbelievable environment. That would have been huge as well. But just to be able to come back twice like we have and hold serve a little bit, as people say, with winning our 2 home games, it's good for our guys. We're a young team still trying to learn how to win and how to do things. And a lot of guys in our program are, learning how to make big plays. Those were big free throws by KJ at the end. It was good to see him do that. I was telling somebody outside that KJ had the ball at the end there at Florida State. We kind of got him the ball at the top with 12 seconds or whatever it was on the shot clock to make a play, and he really kind of didn't do it. It was expected in some ways, maybe, but, those guys got to realize that they're the guys. You can't always get the ball to Book. As much as you want to, that's not going to always be the option. And Milt's not a guy who creates as much. So, he and Rod and those guys are going to have to make some plays to win some games. And they're going to have to make plays at the end of games. Today it was free throws, so that was good. It's a learning experience, certainly for all those kinds of guys.
And I think I know some of you in the chat room are talking about Clemson getting a win and the fact that everybody bangs their chest, and then the people who say they're going to fire the coach after any loss. I think the biggest issue that Clemson's had is that consistency. And we talked about Brownell's his home record, but the record on the road hasn't been good, and they've come up short just barely in a number of opportunities throughout his tenure. I think that's a testament to the fact that he is a very good coach. Now, games typically come down to the final moments. I mean, games really do. They're played in those final few minutes a lot of times in conference play, and for Clemson, it's so important, I think, that they execute the key plays. And for me, to get a win against Georgia Tech the way we did, when we really didn't execute all that well down the stretch, was big. But Coach Brownell continues to discuss the development of KJ McDaniels.
He's still got a long way to go as a player. He certainly has a very good ceiling to play, and bigger ceiling than most. And he'll be a better player when he's 26, 27, when he's really fully into his body and more mature as a player, because he still really is he's very young as a perimeter player. And it's going to take a lot of time for him to get really comfortable making all the kinds of moves. He's even uncomfortable defending sometimes. Gets caught on screens, gets turned around. Now, sometimes he makes up for it with a great block. Sometimes he doesn't. But obviously he shows unbelievable signs of, he has big upside. It was great to see him make 5 threes in a game, the last game. He can affect a game a bunch of different ways. He can block shots and affect a game. He can affect it in transition. The half court is where it's still more difficult for him to affect a game. And that's a little bit as evidenced by the Florida State play. And he's got to get better at that.
And finally, Coach Brad Brownell gets into some of those young guards and the way they've played, and in fact, the development a little bit in what we saw. I'm not going to say development just yet, but the play of Bernard Sullivan. He's a kid who every once in a while, I know you all scratch your heads a lot when Milton Jennings is on the court. Milton's played much better in recent weeks, especially at home. But Bernard Sullivan's a guy who's been through some ups and downs, and you really, I think, expect a lot out of. And even you heard the announcer during the game, when I went back and watched it, say something to the effect of, Bernard Sullivan's a kid who I watched at practice for 2 weeks and I never saw, or 2 days, and I never saw a move like that with the enthusiasm, with the energy that he put into the move during the game. And they got into maybe some players just play a little bit better with the lights on. The thing about Sullivan is, a lot of times even when the lights are on, he was never in the game. And I don't know if some of that comes down to the fact that at practice he doesn't deliver, but clearly Coach Brownell sees that down the road, Bernard Sullivan is going to be a key guy for this Clemson Tiger team.
Bernard was great tonight. Really happy for him because he's been working at it. In practice, sometimes he's played well and other times he's struggled. Sometimes the game just seems to move a little fast for him every once in a while. Having said that, there's a huge difference between Bernard physically this year than last year. Last year he was a completely different guy with some of his ailments and just he struggled. Now, he still isn't one of those guys with conditioning that is great, but he has his explosiveness back, and obviously you saw that on the tip dunk. We've seen more explosiveness in the last, month, 6 weeks with him, and that's been really good to see. There are just some things that he struggles with a little bit, and but today he was big. We don't win the game if he doesn't play that well. He makes a three, had a nice drive. Just he fought inside better and dealt with some bigger guys and hung in there pretty well. Landry, I thought defensively was good tonight. Now, those guys weren't in there the whole time, but I thought he did a good job. Their minutes were big. Obviously, Filer and Roper did some good things their first time in the first half when we were down a little bit, and they scored a couple baskets. Gave us a lot of juice. Adonis brings a lot of energy. Sometimes it can go haywire. We don't always know where it's going, but he's bringing a lot of energy. He's going to be out there, and some things are going to happen. He's going to get some loose balls. He's going to track down some rebounds. He's going to bring it up the court with speed. And I thought when we played the three little guys together, Rod, Rope, and Adonis, for a little segment in the first half, I thought their energy and their ability to drive it with speed, they're just faster than DeMarcus and KJ, and to put all three of them out there together, I thought kind of gave us a little better speed in our offense, and moving it around was good for us in the first half.
And I really like that whole segment there with Coach Brad Brownell, because he really gives you some insight into what he's thinking, and you can clearly see that he's feeling more confident with the development of these players. And it's not to say that he never felt good, but it had to be a moment. There had to be a moment earlier in this season when you just aren't – you're not able to get it done with some of these young guys in the game. There's bad turnovers. There's situations where they're committing bad fouls, putting your team in really bad spots. And some of that comes with being on the road in the mental part of the game. I'm kind of hoping that we're seeing the end of some of that. Well, a whole hour has gone by here on TigerNet Talk. I appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to answer one more question from the chat room. I know Dallas had put one in here for David as well, but we'll go ahead and take this one. I know that the next time we talk, we'll be looking at the recruiting class and hoping that we find some nice packages under our Christmas tree, as February 6th will be here next Wednesday, and we'll talk about that. Hopefully we'll have David Hood on to evaluate the class, and maybe some other guests can join us. Of course, look for Tom Luganbill on Clemson Hotline this week. That'll be on ClemsonSportsTalk.com. You can always find the archived editions of the show on the front page. They're also in iTunes and all kinds of players on your mobile device. Just look around. You can find something. The podcast player, they're out there. There are plenty of ways to consume our product, including our YouTube channel. And for those of you who always wonder if I hit record on the YouTube version, yes, I did hit record before the show started. Anyway, Dallas says in the chat room here on Spreecast, hey, Lawton, love the show. What position do you think is our biggest recruiting need, and who would be the best fit? Look, Dallas, I don't think this is a question that many people can't answer. I think clearly the biggest need on this team, and although I like the development of some of the young guys, Grady Jarrett, I like the development of DJ Reader, for me, it's Montravius Adams at that defensive tackle position. He's a kid who I think has all the ability in the world to be an impactful player. I think he's a guy that if you can get him in on campus, not only is he good enough to play, he will push the other guys to get better. Now, we always look at the size school these kids play at. Can the fact that he played at a smaller school impact his play at the collegiate level? Maybe. Maybe he's one of those guys. Look, I saw a kid down at Bamberg, South Carolina. You may remember him, Chris Franklin, who was a man among boys at 2A football back when Bamberg played in 2A. We know he went to Clemson. We know his career didn't pan out, not because necessarily of on-the-field issues or the fact that he couldn't have gotten on the field later in his career, but he was a guy who stood out at the high school level, and I don't know if he would have ever stood out at the collegiate level. But I can point right across the conference to Allendale Fairfax and Raymond Priester, a kid who stood out at the 2A level and then went to Clemson and became Clemson's all-time leading rusher. So it's always difficult, I think, to evaluate these guys completely before they get there. We could throw up 3-star and 4-star and 5-star and 2-star, but really you don't evaluate these guys until they're done with your program or out of your program. And a 5-star guy who can't cut it in the classroom is really no good at all. I mean, and that's just the facts of and the nature of recruiting and what it is to be part of a athletic and academic institution. And for some players who aren't cutting it in the classroom in high school, they've had to cut ties with Clemson, or Clemson, better yet, has cut ties with them. Anyway, it should be an exciting week. Email us, clemson81@gmail.com, or tweet to us, #TNTalk throughout the week. Follow us on Twitter. We're at Clemson Sports. And you've been listening to TigerNet Talk, presented by Cross Creek Timber and Cross Creek Realty. Check them out online at crosscreektimber.com and crosscreekrealtyllc.com. Until next time, I'm your host, Lawton Swann, signing off. Y'all take care now, and as always, go Tigers!